My grandmom wears hearing aids. In fact, all our grandparents actually wear hearing aids, which is why we ended up on this thing. But when I told my dad, hey, let's just go buy the AirPods, because my grandmom's hearing aids are kind of worn out and to the point where it was useless. So she needed a new pair of hearing aids, and hearing aids kind of cost anywhere upwards of like 80 grand to like 6 lakh rupees, right? And I heard that like the AirPod Pros had this feature, so it just seemed like a very obvious bet, like to kind of go and get them. And I went and like got these. So yeah, so it's like a great comparison.
It's my grandma's hearing aid, the old ones. Obviously, these are the new ones. Yeah, these guys cost like a lakh and a half. They're super pricey, very clunky. You get to wear them, you feel like a patient. There's a little button there, very painful for her to press. She's like a Parkinson's patient, so I would have to like turn it off and on. Like before I put it in the case, I turn it off, otherwise it like freaks out. Anyway, it's a bad experience compared to this guy.
Yeah. So I was just like curious, like, hey, how can we use these as hearing aids? Because I know they were advertising that feature like sometime in September. So we went to the store, bought the thing, and then realized that it's actually region locked in India because regulatory issues, and like they're marketing them as an actual medical device, and now it has to go through whatever long procedure there is to get things approved. So at some point it'll probably come to India, but I mean we wanted it then. So like I think I kind of kicked off this entire project of trying to understand exactly how a company like Apple actually geo-locks or geo-restricts like features like this. So this is the kind of the process, and this started kind of exploring how do we like unlock the feature. So it was very obvious that I think the phone was doing all the heavy lifting. So Apple has a bunch of different checks they would kind of perform to see if a feature is kind of region locked or not, or like regulatory locked in a domain. So the most obvious one is just like a GET request to some domain that tells you like the country that the device is located in. This was kind of easy, just like rewrite this in like a proxy and you're kind of off the races. But the problem with doing this is actually that certificate pinning is something you'll run into very quickly, because even if you install a root CA on your device, I'm just going to assume I can just like nerd out about this.
Yeah.
Okay, so even if you install like install your own certs on the device, the system level apps will not actually respect that, which means that you cannot actually MITM traffic on an iPhone very easily unless you have root. You actually have to like jailbreak it or do something like that. And that's not really possible in the latest versions of iOS anyway. So this was the most obvious thing to try. This did not work. And then I kind of started like wondering, how does the device know where it's located? And so if you actually plug it into your laptop or something in the console, you'll kind of see it, if you just like look for like country or any such flags, you'll kind of see it say like regulatory domain, last known location, and it says India there. So at this point, like basically the entire challenge was how do we make this regulatory domain thing flip to some other country? Because we didn't know this later, when we were doing this, but if you change it to the United States once and you enable a feature, it kind of syncs to your iCloud account. So it's just basically a one-time thing. So I obviously tried the obvious stuff, like a VPN proxy that made my device connect to my laptop, proxy the traffic through VPN. None of this stuff works. So it turns out Apple has a couple of other checks they do. One is if it's an iOS device, they kind of look at the cellular network and look at the MCC and like the MNC codes being sent by the cellular towers, right? But this is an iPad, so this is great because basically none of that stuff exists. There's no GPS chip, there's nothing. So then I tried to like spoof code location with Xcode, and that didn't work either because it turns out, as we found out later, if you actually go through like the disassembly for like I think this is the country D, which is the same. No, this is Bluetooth. But there's a country D process you can kind of see here. If you go through like the disassembly for this thing, there's actually, I mean, we're not confirmed this. We didn't actually see it through, but when we were doing this to kind of figure out, hey, what's happening, we found out that it actually checks to see if there's a simulated location. So you can't just simulate location with Xcode or something, which is what a lot of people are saying. Why don't you just simulate location with Xcode? It doesn't really work. So I think this is a bunch of stuff that I tried on that Saturday and we just called it. And like I had to get back to work, so I kind of had to move on to other things. And then I think Monday, the like three of us met back up at Lagrange Point, and we were all just looking at this stuff, trying to figure out how could the iPad that's only Wi-Fi know that it was not actually in the US? How does it know that it was in India? Because we're giving it nothing else. So yeah, this is about when like one of our friends just kind of pointed out that the way that these devices actually locate you in like where you are in the world is they're constantly scanning around for like Wi-Fi and like Bluetooth beacons. They kind of already have these things mapped out, saved on their end, and they just basically do a lookup. So looking at the kind of SSIDs around you, they just kind of check. As long as your device has data, it'll actually be able to check and query and like tell you exactly where you're located. GPS actually works better in cities than it does out in the country. The reason for that is when you're actually using maps or something in a city, the device is looking for like Wi-Fi SSIDs in like the air around you. And it's constantly sending that back to like Apple or Google, depending on like which poison you pick. All of these devices use a combination of GPS and like this SSID scanning to triangulate you in space. This is just like more accurate, I guess, because of the like look at the volume. Right?
So even if you're away from networks, you'll always have a GPS.
Yes. Actually, this is how it works in buildings. If you're like in the basement of a building or something, you can still like find yourself in the building, right? And that's because of this. They're able to triangulate you based on the SSIDs.
I'm guessing switch off. You put on the airplane mode, right? After a few hours, it should become stable.
Yes, that's exactly what happens. So there's sites like this, like Wiggle, right? Which there are just people who just war drive with like network adapters to their phones and just like upload their data. To like databases like this. And if it loads, you'll see that that's exactly what this is. You can kind of query by latitude, longitude, and find like networks in that area. This is very simple. So the obvious thing was then we kind of build this like Faraday cage. This is basically like the first test. I think we can see like this in SDR there, and we're literally sticking an antenna in there. We built an antenna accidentally, but we learned it should not touch the outer shell of the Faraday cage and all that.
For connects with like just listening to like good old like FM radio, and the antennas inside, we're trying to see if like our like aluminum foil Faraday cage is good enough at shutting it down, and it wasn't very good. It took some effort, but.
So basically, we were trying to build a Faraday cage, and then inside it, we thought we'd put like an ESP or something, and then we'd broadcast fake data at the device, and that's basically what we ended up doing, right? So the trick kind of was, we initially thought, this meme of microwave ovens being like a Faraday cage, so we put our phone and stuff inside, but it was actually not very good. So the trick we figured out was it's a very leaky microwave, so we kind of killed the 5 gigahertz network on our router, and I mean it doesn't really penetrate very far, right? So it's just ours that really mattered, and we turned the microwave on, put some water in it, turned it on. We packed that box with like actually I have a picture of it. It was kind of like this. We packed an iPad, we packed the ESP, and just like a ton of foil inside it, and just like closed it all up, ran the microwave at full power, and then we just like restarted it. We just waited for it to restart. So there's a little thing of the regulatory domain update thing is valid for 600 seconds or so, and so the trick was we just had to wait for that the previous location, which is set to India, to kind of become stale, and then the device would automatically go out and look for a new one. And because we were providing like data over this cable, it would immediately like send all these fake SSIDs from like the Facebook headquarters. And then the device kind of woke up. We restarted it woke up, and it just like enabled the feature, right? Yeah, I think this is about it. And then the rest of the week was kind of just spent building a Faraday cage, like proper Faraday cage, because we realized that this exact setup looks horrible. It was also very janky because it actually took us time to get it to work properly and repeatably.
But it's a happy moment.
Nice.
Yeah. And
so did you figure out a way to get it to persist? I mean, is there a way?
So the fun part is, I think once you use. So the thing is, once you enable the hearing aid feature, the profile it's actually an equalizer preset that's pushed to the AirPods, so it doesn't really need the device after that.
I see.
And it
once it's unlocked, it just persists.
Yeah, and if you do it on someone's iCloud account, it basically syncs to the iCloud account, and it's basically enabled forever. Like Rithvik's iPad is like enabled. If you have AirPods, you can enable it.
Wow, that's amazing.
You wanna talk about the?
So then we were like, okay, this cage is great, but what if like we made like a really like a proper Faraday cage? It'll come in handy someday, right? Like obviously it's nice to have one of these. So we were like, okay, let's make a nice
Nobody
cage.
can contest that.
Exactly, yeah. Like how good is it to have one of these, right? So yeah, we went to SP Road, and we are like, okay, we will build it out of, we decided to build it out of like these aluminum extrusions, and we found copper mesh, which is surprisingly, it's not like a super common thing, but it's not rare either. So we bought copper mesh, and our idea is, okay, these are the common materials for building a Faraday cage. These are the best materials because they're very conductive, right? And we want gaps that are smaller than and the engineering guidance is 1/10 the wavelength of the wavelength we want to block out, right? So we want 2.4 gigahertz. That is 12.5 centimeters.
12 mm.
12 centimeters.
Oh shit.
And so we want 1.25 centimeters to be our largest gap in the thing. I mean, it sounds easy, but it's actually hard because sometimes the gap could be a thin slit, and that would break it. So we started to figure out how to build this. We cut up the aluminum. We got some measurements wrong and had to improvise. It's a little shabby, and then we figured out how we're going to attach these cut out mesh sections to the frame. We 3D printed some inserts. All that. It took a good evening of just building to figure it out. And yeah, we have the cage, and the cage also does the same job, right? It inside the cage, it's good at blocking out anything below radio and GPS, and for Wi-Fi it really diminishes, but we still aren't able to fully block it yet, so we probably want to rebuild the cage. But it's good enough to where if you combine it with the ESP32, it does block out it overpowers the signal, and then the Menlo Park signal from the ESP32 dominates and unlocks the device. So we unlocked a few other devices belonging to us.
Yeah.
And here's a nice little picture of the thing.
Yeah.
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 Awesome.